The distress ping hit Terran deep space at 02:11 UTC, the kind of sound that makes a duty officer sit up straight even if the coffee's cold. Admiral Maya Rios was already awake on the bridge of the Utv Lionheart, watching the dark like a patient hunter. The ping wasn't words so much as panic encoded in harmonics, Orish and lattice voices fracturing as the Jadator combine pressed a wall of ships toward their blue-white world. "Feed it," Rios said. The holo bloomed 3,000 red motes in a slow, suffocating tide. "Combined doctrine," murmured Commander Arun Patel Herzo. "Phase veils adapting on the millisecond. Everyone shoots energy at them, then everyone dies." "Everyone," Rios echoed, and her gaze slid to the manifest that other species snickered at. "No plasma lances chic enough to get you invited to crystal ball galas. Just honest metal and chemical fire." Lieutenant Wu jumped geometry. Celeste Wu didn't look up. "We can emergency skip to Orisha's 4th orbit in 80 seconds. Price is heat in the capacitors. Shields will spool late." "Chief Gray?" Rios called. Nalan Gray, electronic warfare and grins that came out when problems got impossible, tapped a quiet rhythm on the console with 2 fingers. "I've been reading their sync protocols since the last border scuffle. They run everything to a choir beat, Admiral. Phased, perfect, pretty. Choirs are easy to make cough." "Don't cough them yet," she said. "First we show teeth." She nodded to gunnery. "Open the coffin locker. The armorer swallowed. Aye, freight goes hot." The Lionheart and 46 other Terran hulls were not beautiful by Concord standards. Angular armor, external spines that looked like scaffolds because they were scaffolds built by people who fixed things more often than they preened. Inside those spines, containerized mass, old ore cans plated and balanced, each with a guidance puck and a dumb tungsten core. Freight weaponized by a civilization raised on shipping lanes and stubbornness. Set them cold. Rios's voice was almost gentle. No glow, no signature. Let gravity do the talking. She opened a channel to the Orishan. The projection resolved into a being of prismatic filaments trembling in bunched chords. "Admiral Rios," it sang. Translator finding English pauses. "They broke our light. Our beams passed through their veils like winter sun. Then let us try a different season." She muted and looked back at Patel. "You remember Dunkirk. Civilian boats crossing a killing sea to pull soldiers out," he said. "Logistics as heroism. We may need that. Cue the Dunkirk protocol for tugs, ferries, anything that flies and isn't suicidal. Evac lanes straight to L4 shelters. We screen." "Jump geometry green," Wu reported. "All ships report hot rails, coffins full." Rios let herself breathe once, just once. "This is not about being the cleverest killers," she told her crew. "It's about buying enough tomorrows that people who make music can wake up to use it. Execute." Space folded. For a human, it felt like missing a step on the stairs that connect you to your childhood kitchen and a battlefield. For a machine, it was numbers, and for an admiral, it was commitment. They dropped into Orisha's 4th orbit behind the Combine's leftward push. The view ate the breath in Rios's chest, a planet stitched with glinting sea lattices, aurora veils rippling over poles, and a space crowded with burning regrets. Orishan vessels bled light. Combined frigates flew like a metronome. "Veils haven't tagged us," Gray whispered. "They're busy watching everyone who glows. You ready to be stupid, Maya?" "Thought you'd never ask," she said, and smiled like someone who had learned stoic calm by sanding it into herself over years. "Gunnery, 1 coffin nail, center mass, that carrier with the cathedral spine. Keep it sub-sensor. Let the math carry it." The Lionheart's rails were long, hungry things. They did not hum boldly when they fired. They coughed like old engines and ate capacitors whole. A standard ore can, repurposed, balanced, and jacketed, left the cradle so slowly that an untrained eye would miss it. No heat, no light, only mass and intention. "Time to impact?" Patel asked. 2.8 seconds, said Wu. "No one will even know it's coming." Rios had read of Midway as a child, how timing and luck and stubborn pilots turn the ocean. She thought of those pilots now, hands shaking in planes patched with prayer. She thought of the Montgomery bus boycotts, quiet brilliance, how supply lines are civil rights made mundane and invincible. She let those histories braid in her mind, a rope to throw forward. The Orcan arrived. It did not ask the phase veil for permission. It stepped through like a neighbor through a screen door and wrote its name down the combined carrier's spine in kinetic ink. The cathedral unmade itself along a precise line into a sun-hot cloud of regret. "Confirm kill," Patel breathed. "Confirm," Gunnery said, stunned and proud. Every channel went silent. On Orisha, the aurora seemed to falter as if the planet itself had paused. Then the combine reacted like beehives on fire. Vale's vector shimmered. Dozens of ships pivoted toward the ungainly Terran wedge. Vale harmonics spiking, Gray warned. "They're going to flash the whole choir at us." On the planet, an Orishan city sang a low note of fear. In orbit, 3,000 angry motes leaned in. "Maya," Wu said, voice calm by force, "they've brought a star lance to bear on Orisha's equatorial lattice. 10 seconds to fire." Rios didn't sit, she didn't blink. "All ships," she said, steady as the keel of an old ship in a hard storm. "Shield the planet, breakwater formation, and get ready to make the choir miss the beat." The star lance spooled brighter, a spear of white godlight aiming for a world's throat. Breakwater. Rio snapped, and 47 human hulls slid as one, wedged broadside between the lance and the world. The Lionheart took center line, the destroyers fanned like shield-bearers at Thermopylae. It was an old story, a few standing for the many, bodies the wall when walls ran out. "Radiators to the starboard shadow," Patel ordered. "We'll cook." "We'll live," Rio said. "Chief Gray, make the choir stumble." Gray's fingers drummed. Uploading metronome. It doesn't break their math, it makes it late. On her tactical overlay, the combine's weapon sync pulse danced. Pristine, periodic, almost pretty. Gray dropped a seed into the network that amplified jitter the way a bad mic makes an auditorium howl. The pretty line hiccuped. The star lance fired, not a clean, cutting spear but a smear of light, off by a fraction. It gutted vacuum 50 clicks high of the Terran wedge and plowed into an abandoned ore scaffold, turning steel to dawn. Orisha's equatorial lattice flared but did not shatter. The city below kept singing. Cheering pealed across comms that weren't supposed to carry cheering. Rios let it stand for 3 beats before clipping it with her voice. "We're not here to high-five the void. Destroyer screen. Picket the Dunkirk lanes. Freighters, ferries. If you can push a child and her violin out system, you are now the finest captains alive." She opened the public net. "All civilian craft, plot vectors to L4 shelters. We will draw fire. Do not be brave, be stubborn. Go." "Admiral," Lieutenant Wu said softly, Orishan singing you thank you chords. "Tell them to save it for later," Rios replied. "We're going to need a choir." The combine adapted like it was what they were built to do. Their veils shuddered and sharpened. Minds flowered from sleek pods into a glittering thorn thicket between Terran hulls and the Dunkirk lanes. "Minefield density rising," Patel reported. "If we push straight, we'll shred." Rios watched the pattern bloom. She didn't see a wall. She saw a fence made by someone who thought only wolves had legs. "They expect elegance out of us," she said. "Give them derelict. Gunnery, detach the hardscrabble tugs. Tell them to tow our trash." "Our trash," Gunnery echoed. "Everything we can spare. Vent scraped plating, broken pallets, empty fuel bladders. Make a junk river, then shove it hard. We'll let their minds prove their worth on yesterday's metal." She remembered a photograph from the Dunkirk beaches. Men chest-deep in gray water passing children hand to hand. Logistics is love with grease on it. And keep the coffin locker moving. No signatures. Hit carriers and anything with a fancy hat. Junk spilled from human hulls like an iron comet tail. The hard-scrabble tugs, workers' ships with paint still under their fingernails, pushed the clanking river at the mine pods. The pods did what they were born for. They killed the first thing they could find. The fence became a fireworks show. The lane beyond flickered open like a wound. "First civilian column crossing," Patel called. 200 lifeboats, a school ship named Narration. His voice Hitch smiled. "They're keeping the kids quiet with an astronomy lesson." Good, Rio said, and meant everything in that word. On the combined net, Gray's metronome kept time badly on purpose. He thought of the Navajo code talkers he'd filled a school report with as a kid, how language could be a shield and a knife, how a song could be a cipher. They're trying to phase me out, he warned. Switching to a new clock. Then we use two, Rio said. Double riff, make them choose which beat is truth. On the planet, Orishan commanders sent up a worry cord. Our beams still fail, the translation murmured. We are ornamental in our own defense. You're dense, Rio's replied before Patel elbowed her metaphor gently. Your hulls, carbon lattice, you shed shards when you spin up, shed them on purpose. Turn and spill glitter, we'll light it. Spill glitter, came the uncertain song. Rios felt shame nip her heels. She just told an ally to break pieces off themselves. We will pay you back in steel and time, she promised. But right now that glitter will blind a lot of very smug sensors. Orishan ships spun like ballerinas under fire, shedding bright snow that Terran point defense licked with low-power arcs. The arcs made photons in messy ways. The Combine's optical arrays filled with noise. Their veils chased ghosts and glints and got out of position for the things that mattered, like Orcans with bad attitudes. A Combine cruiser tried to be a hero and got introduced to a coffin nail. Another tried to ram a lifeboat and discovered that a tugboat with a righteous captain is a weapon you don't study in academies because you'd have to teach courage in the syllabus. Ammo check, Patel called. Rails at 60%, gunnery said. Freight nails at 40, missiles green. Rios looked at the board and saw the math a long war always sets like a chore in your cheek. You can win every minute and still lose the hour. Chief Gray, how long until they find their new downbeat? 30 seconds, then the choir sings in unison again. Then we steal 31. Xi Squadron on me. We're going to punch where the junk river runs thin. She pointed to a seam her eyes had made by watching too long and too hard. We break here or we die tired. Destroyers flared. The Lionheart leaned. The combined formation shivered in that place where machines and pride are the same flimsy thing. Admiral, Wu said, crisp and too calm, we're painting a Super Heavy's core, charging. If it vents now, the Dunkirk lane cooks. We're out of tricks. Rios did not answer with words. She raised her hand again, and the bridge held its breath. Because once in a while, the universe hangs the next second on one person's fingers. The Super Heavy's core brightened toward choice. Kill the pretty, Rio said. Chief, give me shanties. Gray blinked once, then grinned because he loved when a plan sounded like nonsense and wasn't. Copy, shanty sink. He'd recorded the Lionheart's maintenance crew singing work songs months ago, the kind of beat that makes 10 hands pull as if they were one. He braided those rhythms through the metronome virus and pushed it into the Combine's timing network. Perfect clocks met human voices that leaned a hair ahead of the measure on purpose. The Combine's choir inhaled at the wrong time. The Super Heavy missed its vent cadence. Pressure spiked sideways into radiator veins instead of the weapon throat. Radiator fields lit like festival lanterns, beautiful and useless. The heat never left. The ship faltered. Now, Rios said, and the human wedge became a blade again. Orcans took advantage of arrogance and physics and the way a man who thinks he cannot be punched forgets to keep his hands up. Carriers bled. A missile cluster, plain and chemical and indecently effective, broke a command ship's spine. Civilian column too clear, Patel reported. The murmuration teacher is explaining eclipses. Let her teach tomorrow, Rio said. I want tomorrow to exist. On the planet, Orishan sang a wild, surprised chord as their glitter screens worked too well, confusing even themselves. Wu threaded courses through the photonic blizzard like a seamstress sewing daylight into a torn sleeve. Deploy mirror kites, Rios ordered. Gunnery hesitated. Admiral, those are survey gear. And they reflect starlight, she said. Get them in the radiance of Orisha's sun and angle the glare into combined radiator fields. You can win a fight with a mirror if the other boxer refuses to wear sunglasses. Kites popped from launchers like pale seeds, unfolded into silver wings, and caught the local star. Beams of honest sunlight lanced across space, a gentler cousin to a weapon but brutal when a hot ship could no longer sneeze away its own fever. Combined veils weren't built to say no to photons in that key. Radiators flashed and sagged. Performance degraded. Pilots cursed. Somewhere a Jadator engineer began a memo he would not finish. Weapon harmonics fragmenting, Gray reported. Our shanties have the choir off enough to dance. Patel's tone went less officer and more person. Admiral, the third column down lane just signaled. They've got elders who can't tolerate acceleration. They'll be slow. We don't leave them, Rio said. We've done Dunkirk before and we'll do it again. She thought of the Children's March in Birmingham, of logistics lines in the civil rights movement, of people carrying the weary on feet that blistered for the sake of a better map. Destroyer 7, fall back and bodyguard. Tugboats, you just got promoted to heroes. A combined squadron, dignity in tatters, lunged to make an example. The example turned out to be that human point defense was built by nations that once worried about things that come fast and angry at low altitude. The sky filled with thumb-sized tungsten that tore pride and pretty veils like confetti. One Jadator pilot got close enough to draw, in a flash of petty hatred, a bead on a lifeboat named Salamander. A tug called Grit slid in front, took 3 hits on armor meant to nudge asteroids, and kept nudging. The Salamander's pilot sobbed thanks into an open mic, and Gray pretended his console had static in it. Rails at 40, Gunnery said. Freight nails at 22. Long enough, Rio said, and then the board went cold. Patel's voice fell a step. Reading cross-fleet synchronization in the combined swarm, they are linking cores. Wu's jaw tightened. They're going to pop themselves. On the main pane, orbs glowed inside Jadator hulls. Not weapon bright, but wrong bright, a kind of planned catastrophe. 2,000 seeds of ending, harmonized through a communion lattice built for triumph songs and now retuned for mutual murder. Estimated time to overrun Cascade? Rios asked. 2 minutes 40, Wu said. We can't shoot that many. We can't run everyone far enough. The channel bloomed with a face of scales and certainty, a Jadator legate whose skin glittered like coins. Humans, the translator said in dry silk. You win your seconds with clever dirt. We win the hour with sacrifice. Orisha dies with us. Rios's reply was soft. We've heard that song. We buried it. She nodded at Gray. Network health. Wide open, he said, shock and glee blended because the Jadator had pulled down their firewalls to braid destruction together. They wanted every voice in the hymn. I can hear them breathing. Rios looked at the overrun parameters and saw a river above its banks. You cannot stop the flood. You can dig a ditch. Don't cancel it. Move it. Where? Gray asked. Everywhere is death, Patel said. Not everywhere, Rios said, and pointed to a shining tower in the combined formation's heart. The communion spire that acted as timing master and pride instrument both. Into the bell. Let the choir hear itself. Gray's hands were lightning. He braided shanties with code and malice with mercy and turned a war into an equation with one solution. The overrun energy found the new path of least resistance, and that path was a spire built to bear witness, not to bear the weight of 1,000 small endings. Execute, Rios whispered. The legate's eyes widened as his own network obeyed a human beat. His face vanished. The spire brightened past beautiful and into the place where beauty falls apart. It rang, a silent wave that turned instruments to guesswork and sensors to prayer. Then it broke, not just as an explosion, but as a choice happening in metal, to fail here instead of everywhere else. Push out, Rios ordered. Shields to front, ride the wave. The shock slapped them, plates rattled, somebody cursed affectionately at a bulkhead, the mirror kites tore and tumbled away like silver fish. When the light ebbed, the communion spire was gone, and with it the will of 1,000 ships to pretend they wanted to die. On the line, Orishan sang a high relief that broke into a messy, lovely chord humans call laughter. Rios opened a channel on all bands. Jadator vessels, power down. You will be treated under just war protections. We will not kill you for laying down your arms. We will kill you if you try that trick again. Silence, and then, one by one, cooling cores, quiet hulls. The Combine had discovered an old human truth. Bravery and stubbornness are different metals than suicide and spite. Admiral, Patel said, Concord of Worlds requests parley. Also, our med ships are already patching Jadator. Our docs didn't ask. They just went. Good, Rio said, and her eyes stung for the first time all day. That's who we are. Wu's console chimed, not like danger, like the doorbell of a house with too many casseroles showing up after the worst day. Jump signatures, she said. Hundreds, not Jadator. Gray winced. Concord fleets, auxiliaries, press, and others. Everyone wants to see the monster that saved the choir. Rios smoothed her uniform with hands that had been steady for too long. Then we go talk. The Concord Assembly Station was a ringed cathedral of glass and compromise. Rios walked into its central sphere with Patel at her side, Wu and Gray ghosting 2 steps back. Species mulled like curiosities in a museum you weren't sure you could afford to enter. Some reached to touch the human uniforms, others pulled their children away gently as if from a hot stove. At center stand, a chair being of living prisms chimed to call silence. Admiral Rios, the translation flowed. The Concord recognizes your intervention and questions your methodology. Rios had thought of what to say and thrown most of it away. We did what we had to so that children could sleep, she said. We tried not to kill anyone who made a better choice when given one. A jelly-bright diplomat pulsed. Your weapons are crude. Our ethics aren't, Rios answered. You built walls sturdy against light. We swung a hammer made of mass. Either is only as civilized as the hand that wields it. A metallic swarm that thought as one flickered. The Combine attempted a mutual destruction protocol. You redirected it into their command organ. This is disturbing. It was proportional and discriminating, Rios said. Just war theory isn't a slogan where we come from. It's a yardstick we hold to our own throats. We chose a single target that commanded killing rather than let everyone die, including the people we came for. I won't apologize for building a ditch when a flood was coming. The Orishan representative, filaments calm again, voice richer, sang, They saved us. When light failed, they brought mass. When fury wanted a chorus, they taught it a solo. Rios didn't look up at that. She looked at Gray, who was staring at the floor as if ashamed of how proud he was. Our EW chief learned to love rhythms because he learned that songs keep work crews together, she said into the hall. Midway was won by timing and sacrifice. The bus boycotts were won by rides given and shoes resoled at midnight. We keep winning with logistics and grace where we can, with fists where we must. If that scares you, good. Fear can be honest, so can hope. A young envoy with skin like stormwater rose. Admiral, there are Jadator among us who were conquered second generation, raised to fight. They request sanctuary. How many? Patel asked on a private line. Gray answered anyway. 300 ships worth of crews, maybe 200,000 souls, some children. Rios didn't blink. Yes, she said to the hall. We have room. It will be hard. We will do it anyway. She thought of a poem welded to a statue on an old harbor and of the way hands make welcome by picking up boxes and warming soup, not by speeches. The prism chair chimed again, a lower, approval-curious tone. A vote then on Terran inclusion in the Concord Security Compact. The hall's light bled sideways as if something leaned on the station from a great distance. Wu's voice ghosted into Rios's ear. Maya, new jumps. Edge of the Assembly's exclusion zone, not Jadator. Identify, Patel said, already bracing for the kind of news that makes your back ache before your muscles know why. Signatures consistent with the veiled march, Gray said. Isolationists, they don't like how today turned. They brought guns and a sermon. Rios breathed in once, letting stoic discipline run a cloth over the sharp edge her fear could become. She looked at the hall, at the Orishan who had trusted glitter, at envoys who didn't know whether to hide or clap, at a future hinged like a door on a cheap screw. She toggled the fleet net with a thumb and spoke as if her voice could hold a line you couldn't see. Terran fleet, set breakwater in the assembly's shadow, coffin locker status. Rails 20, gunnery answered from far away and right beside her heart. Freight nails 10, missiles green, mirror kites, we can tape a few back together. Good enough, Rio said. Chief Grip, I need the shanty sink warmed. The march will sing in lockstep, make them step on their own feet. Lieutenant Wu, plot evacuation corridors for civilians if this goes sideways. Commander Patel, remind our captains what proportionality means when your enemy sneers at it. She turned back to the diplomats. I'm sorry to be rude, she said, which is what you say when you are about to be rude the right way. But we're not done protecting the choir. The hall listened to its own breathing. Outside, the veiled march unfolded like a blade being shown to friends you hope don't need to see it used. Inside, Admiral Maya Rios lifted her hand a third time in one long day and held a galaxy's attention on the width of a palm. The veiled march announced themselves with etiquette sharpened into a blade. Concord Assembly, their primaries intoned on open band, yield the Terran vessels for censure. You have invited wolves into the fold, we arrive to shear. Their ships were slender lacquered, their weapons housings disguised as devotional filigree, beauty as warning. Breakwater holds, Rio said. Outside the glass cathedral, Terran hulls slid into a crescent that cradled the station. The Lionheart's shadow fell across the assembly's lower docks like a promise. Gunnery, freight inventory. 10 coffin nails, the armorer replied. Rails still hungry, missiles full. There was apology tucked under the professionalism, the way a mechanic hates telling you there's more road than tire. Proportional, Rios reminded. We don't turn a sermon into a massacre. Lieutenant Wu, paint me lanes that keep civilians behind our teeth. Copy, Wu said, fingers slicing corridors into the void. Using the station's thermal plumes as cover, if the march fires through them, their optics will flower. If they don't, we get time. She glanced up. Time is still life. On the assembly floor, diplomats murmured like a tide. The Orishan envoy sang a low chord that meant we can hold our breath a little. The prism chair chimed a note of brittle calm. Admiral, the march claimed lawful enforcement. Lawful isn't the same as just, Rio said, not to be clever, but because she needed the sentence to stand up in her head. We'll make room for them to stand down without losing face. She toggled the general hail. Veiled March, Terran Admiral Maya Rios, we're prepared to submit to a Concord inquiry. You fire on this station, you're not enforcing order, you're burning a courthouse. Silence long enough to count regrets. Then, you mistake your novelty for leverage, the march replied. Stand down. Chief Gray's voice braided into hers. I'm in their hymnals, he said softly. They coordinate off a doctrine clock slower than the Jadair's ritual pauses before salvo. We can breathe between stanzas. Good, Rio said. Let's build a breath into a wall, mirror kites. Some patched with tape and bad language, Gunnery said. Enough to glare. Launch kites above the assembly's rim, Rios ordered. Reflect station light back into their sensor cones. Orisha's sun is at our 7, catch it. They want to preach with eyes closed, make them blink. Silver wings unfolded and caught hard daylight. Glitter poured across the march's lacquered bows. Their optical arrays refracted halos that weren't holy. First salvo came anyway, clean, disciplined, late by a breath because Gray's shanty sink tugged the beat. Terran shields met it, the crescent flexed and held. A lesser fleet would have flashed anger back. Rios let her knuckles whiten around the chair and said, Target radiators and maneuvering. Freight only. We don't pierce crew quarters unless they insist. Or cans slip their cradles like sinners sneaking out of church. No heat, no pride, just math. They kissed radiator vanes and shoved ships off their own lines. One March cruiser slewed, missed a correction, and scraped the assembly's exclusion buoy with a squeal you could feel through soles, close enough to learn. Second salvo in 8 beats, Gray said, counting with a rigger's toe tap. They align fire with liturgical phrases. I can make the choir lisp. Do it, Rios said, and broadcast our ROE on open band, non-combatant protection, proportional force, acceptance of surrender. She drew breath. Remind them we mean it. A trio of March lightcutters dove for the refugee penumbra, ships tagged for asylum, children's drawings taped to bulkheads like talismans against vacuum. 2 Terran destroyers rolled to meet them, Hector and Kindly, names that meant story and choice. Point defense blossomed. A cutter took a freight nail through its rudder and spun. The second snapped a lance toward a lifeboat anyway. The Hector moved like a man shoving someone out of the way of a train, took the beam on a slab of armor welded during a budget fight 5 years ago and held. The lifeboat's pilot sobbed gratitude on a frequency she didn't know was public. Someone on the Hector laughed a raw, joyful sound. March primaries opening a jurist net, Wu warned. On holo, filigreed spars unscrolled from their hulls like lacework knitting a dome. If they cast it, it'll null-blind the station's external sensors and choke docking lanes. It's designed to make a siege look like tidy paperwork. Cut their crochet, Rio said. Tug's new job, harpoon those spars, treat them like debris you're ashamed of, pull wrong, make tears. She hesitated a heartbeat, thinking of Thermopylae and the hard choice between where you stand and when you sidestep. Destroyer screen, breathe with the tugs. If the march punishes them, we take the blows. Harpoons bloomed. Cables went taut, sang, and dragged the jurist net off pattern. The dome wrinkled. A March gunship swung to carve a tug in half and learned, like others have, that a worker's ship piloted by someone whose father taught them how to thread a needle with gloves on is not a soft target. Tungsten spat. The gunship flinched. Ammo at 7 coffin nails, gunnery reported. Rails 20%. Still proportional, Rio said, because saying it out loud keeps you honest. Veiled March, last call, stand down and petition. The March answered by lighting a different set of ports. Wu's voice dropped. Heat blooming in their belly, that's not weapons, that's a quiet bomb, a field emitter that nulls comms and fries control circuits. If they pop it close, the assembly goes deaf and dumb. Range? Patel asked. Too close for comfort, Wu said. Too far to stop politely. A beat, then another. Rios found the narrow path between cruelty and cowardice and stepped on it. Xi Squadron with me. We're going to cut the bomb free. How? Patel asked. The quiet bomb rode under the March flagship like a censored footnote, small, deadly, convinced of its own decorum. It needed proximity and silence. Rios intended to give it neither. Chief, she said, make their hymns stumble on the downbeat. I want their fire a hair late and a hair low. Gray's grin had no business on a battlefield and yet steadied the room. Copy, introducing syncopation, will make the sermon swing. He braided work song stutters into the march's liturgical timing, invisible as doubt. Gunnery, Rio said, coffin nail 4, aim for the bomb's harness. Skip it like a stone. We're not trying to detonate, we're trying to make it fall off their pretty teat. Range locked, came the reply. Velocity solution computed. It'll touch the strap and kiss vacuum goodbye if nobody sneezes. Then hold your breath, Rio said. The Orc left the rail without fanfare, a shadow with opinions. The March saw nothing because pride and doctrine had taught them to watch for light. The Can whispered across a stretch of not quite empty space, scraped the harness with the rude tenderness of a dock worker flipping a latch and sent the quiet bomb tumbling. Contact, Wu said. Bomb is loose and arming. It wants a friend. Don't let it make any, Rio said. Tugs snag it, gentle, treat it like a toddler with a grenade. The hardscrabble tugs earn new scars, snagging the emitter with nets meant for asteroid husks. A field shimmered and tried to erase their radios. The crews sang louder because sometimes stubborn noise is the truest comms there is. They dragged the bomb out and down, away from the assembly's delicate ribs. The March responded by shedding moderation. Salvos came thick, the liturgy forgotten, the homily gone cruel. The Kindly's port shields flared and stuttered. A beam burned a path across her flank like a bad memory. She kept station anyway. Xi Squadron on me, Rios called, rolling the Lionheart to present fresh plates. We're going to knock their flagship off its pulpit. She pointed to a vein cluster below the bridge blister. Maneuvering there, touch it with freight, then shove with missiles at minimum yield. Nudge, don't butcher. Coffin nails at 5, Gunnery warned. Enough, Rios said, because stoicism didn't mean optimism. It meant choosing the best move with the pieces you had. Fire! The Freightkin slammed into the Vane cluster, not to pierce but to insult. Guidance thrusters misfired. The flagship yawed, correcting hard-to-save face. A ripple of smaller course errors spilled through the march formation as ships adjusted for the leader's wobble. Wu threaded a vector into that ripple like a fish sliding upstream. Missiles chuffed. Low burn, low yield, all nerve. They hit like firm hands on a drunk friend's shoulders. The flagship drifted across its own jurist net and tangled itself in law. Beauty tore. Primary down a posture, Patel reported. Secondary batteries still hot. Rios opened the hail again. Veiled March, you are entangled in your own authority. Power down and live. A new voice cut into the net, clipped and furious. You will not lecture us into submission, Terran. You are an aberration. You're not the first to call us that, Rios said. The word doesn't do what you think. On the assembly floor, envoys talked fast, fear crawling their vowels. The prism chair chimed for order, failed to get it, then chimed again with something like resolve. Security compact vote postponed until fire ceases, the translation said. All non-essential personnel to shelters. The hall's light dimmed to battle-friendly dusk. The quiet bomb writhed in the tug's nets like an idea fighting its own consequences. It's going to pop regardless, Wu warned. We can shape where. Out and low, Rios said, into the shadow of Orisha's magnetodale. We'll let a planet's physics do what we can't. She thought of midshipmen studying orbital mechanics yawning in classrooms, never imagining they'd use it to cradle something awful. Tugs, you are angels, be ugly and precise. They were both. The bomb burst in a hush that vacuum swallowed. For a heartbeat, every voice on the net broke into snow. Then systems stitched. The assembly's ribs thrummed but did not crack. March's flagship flickered as her doctrine clock stumbled and then went dark, her bridge a silhouette of stubbornness without tools. Rails at 12%, Gunnery said. 4 nails. Enough, Rios said again, but the word carried more plea than brass now. Chief Gray, what are they doing? Arguing, he said, eyes far away. I can hear their captains yelling through the hymn, half want to disengage, half want to martyr. Give the first half a door, Rios said. Open a lane, shine light on it, name it honor if you have to. She opened the general hail one more time. Veiled March, you can leave under parole and petition, or you can stay and be remembered for trying to strangle a hall full of envoys. I can't make you wise, I can make you stop. A trio of March ships peeled away, Pride smoking. Another spun to cover them, guns bright. The Kindly moved between, her wounded flank to the threat, her good side to the asylum lane, and that would have ended quietly if not for the thing Patel saw too late. Contact in the asylum column, he said, one March corvette hiding under a refugee transponder. Rios closed her eyes once, opened them sharper. We don't shoot through the innocent, we separate. She jabbed at the holo. Tugs throw nets across that lane, mirror kites behind to backlight the liar. Hector, kindly ease them apart like you're arguing a holiday dinner. No shouting if you can help it. The corvette tried to bolt. Nets flowered, kites glared, the lie peeled off like paint in the rain. Target acquired, Gunnery said. Do we? Disable only, Rios cut. Take the legs. A coffin nail tapped the corvette's engine cluster like a teacher rapping a desk. The ship went still, sulking. Refugee pilots exhaled the breath they'd been saving for funerals. March flagship signaling personal channel, Wu said. Captain alone. The March captain's face resolved. Severe, beautiful in that brittle way sculpture can be before weather teaches it humility. Admiral Rios, they said, and the translator had to invent a tone for disdain braided with something like curiosity. You fight with freight and folk songs. You shame our doctrine by living up to yours. I don't want to shame you, Rios said. I want you to stop pointing weapons at a building where children are learning how to say each other's names. The captain's gaze flicked aside. Our jurist net records will show you fired first. We fired at your nets, not your hearts, Rios replied. Proportionality isn't a trick, it's a promise. She thought of Augustine and the early drafts of just war that had clawed their way toward decency through centuries of failure. She thought of commanders who had written field orders about non-combatants with hands that shook because they remembered faces. Stand down, petition, walk away. The captain did not nod, they did not sneer, they did something worse, nothing. No, they said finally. We will withdraw our lesser vessels, but we will leave you a lesson. The channel cut. Reading power flows, Wu snapped. Secondary March cruiser, different hull form, charging something under the keel, not quiet, loud. Gray's fingers went pale on his console. Data seer. It's aimed at the assembly's memory stacks. It'll wipe treaties like they were chalk. Rio's tasted copper. No, she said, the way a mother says no to a hand reaching for a stove. If they erase the minutes, they erase the tomorrow that remembers what we promised today. She didn't mean poetry. She meant constitutions as software, vows as files, a galaxy's hard-won better angels stored in silicon and superstition. Options, Patel asked tightly. Hard kill, but stacks are inside the cruiser's shadow, Wu said. We pierce, we bleed civilians. Hack, Patel offered. Gray shook his head. They learned from Jadater. Their doctrine clocks are dumb, but their data locks are feral. Rio set her palms on the chair and felt the ship humming under her like a dog leaning into a hand. We cut the shadow, she said. Mirror kites what's left, put sunlight on the stacks. Overexpose the seer's assumptions. Gunnery, find me an angle that tips the cruiser 2 degrees, just enough. 2 nails, Gunnery warned. Rails at single digits. Then let's make them count. Kites tore from launchers like butterflies with bad intentions. They caught Orisha's son, flung it across vacuum, and put a square of fierce day on the memory vaults. The seer weapon found hard light where it wanted soft shadow and balked, algorithms stuttering. A coffin nail hit the cruiser's dorsal plane and shoved. Not a wound, a suggestion. The hull drifted off its own silhouette. The weapon's cone slipped. Data fire licked empty space. The March captain came back online. Not beautiful now. You make mockery. I make room, Rio said. You can still take it. A new alarm punched her ear. Patel didn't bother making his voice pretty. Incoming, left flank, veiled March, reinforcement. Heavy. They've brought a penitent arc. Wu's voice went quiet the way voices do when your bones agree with math. Arc carries pilgrims and guns. They think dying on purpose is a door. It's plotting a burn that will tuck it into the assembly's shadow and then bloom. Rios looked at Gray. He didn't look back. He knew the answer. I can't talk to that, he said. They took apart their hymn to fit more fuel. The Stoics would have asked her to divide the world into what could be governed and what must be endured. She took the harder option, govern what you can by making more of it yours. Lionheart will intercept, she said. Patel turned his head a fraction. We can't soak that alone. We won't, Rio said. Hector, kindly, you still have teeth. Hector here, came the reply, voice too light to be anything but a man holding fear at arm's length. 2 fangs left. Kindly, a woman said, exhausted and bright, we can still smile. Then we meet the Ark, Rio said. Gunnery last nail to the Ark's throat, its propellant baffles. Missiles on echo, we push it off a saint's path. The Ark loomed like devotion hammered into steel. The Lionheart burned toward it, kites flaring, plates whining. The last coffin nail flew truer than the math said it had any right to and hit the baffle's dead center. The Ark coughed propellant in a white blossom that pushed it sideways, where Hector's small missiles found leverage and Kindly's battered hull put shoulder against sin. It should have been enough. It wasn't. The Ark corrected with the ruthless calm of faith. Its captain bared his head in a ritual camera feed that translated to every frequency on purpose. Witness, he said. Witness this, Gray muttered, and shifted the shanty sink to an ugly beat, a shipyard hiss that made timing itself feel drunk. The Ark faltered half a breath. Half a breath is sometimes all history needs. A civilian ferry named Pepperbox, fat with evacuees and stubborn captains, slid across the Ark's nose like a child, followed by a parent hand already reaching. No, Rio said, but the ferry had already committed. Not ramming, she'd learned from Nancy Green's trick in another war she'd studied, but fainting so close that the Ark blinked. It jinked. The bloom path shifted just enough. Missiles hit the ark's forward ribs, not to crack but to shove. The ark's bloom opened like a flower choked by its own pollen. Light washed the Lionheart's bow. Plates screamed. The ship held a line because that was its job and because pride can be a virtue when it makes you brace for someone else. Damage? Patel asked through a cough. Forward array blind, Wu said. Aux shields gone, but we're here. The arc drifted dark, devotion spent. The march line trembled, the assembly lights steadied. The memory stacks kept their names. Message from the March flagship, Wu said. Short, we depart. You are a bad lesson. Rios let out a breath she had not admitted she was keeping. We'll take that on our report card, she said. Quiet after battle has a sound. Fans you tuned out coming back to your ears, boots finally squeaking on polished floors, the human heart making a drum of itself now that it's allowed. The Concorde assembly breathed. Medics moved. Tugs settled into their berths like dogs curling at the foot of a bed finally safe. Rio stood where she had started, center of a sphere made for voices. The prism chair chimed and the note held longer than protocol. Admiral Maya Rios, the translation said, the Concorde requests you explain again what you intend. Rios watched her own knuckles uncurl. To carry freight, she said, and a few diplomats smiled before they could help it. Supplies, promises, people who need moving from bad places to better ones. When someone makes a doctrine out of hurting the undefended, we intend to get between. When someone writes a law forgetting who will stand under it, we intend to read aloud until they remember. The Orician sang agreement, soft and fierce. The swarm mind flickered assent. Even some of the veiled March sympathizers turned their faces away from the wreckage and toward their better angels. Membership, the prism chair chimed. Vote. There were speeches first because there always are. An elder from a world no Terran had seen thanked the tug captains by name. A machine intelligence asked for blueprints of mirror kites because it had never considered the weaponization of sunlight and found the idea both elegant and humbling. A Jadeir medic, yes, medic, reported that human field hospitals had triaged without asking species first, which was either madness or ethics. The assembly decided ethics. The vote was not close. Rios let herself feel the room tip toward inclusion and then self-correct, because membership is not a trophy, it's work. We'll send our best and our worst, she said, frank. We'll argue at 3 in the morning about budgets for armor plates and scholarships. We'll put a school next to a shipyard. Gray snorted laughter on a private channel. I want the school's fight song, he said. Write it, she replied, and he already was. Patel's slate chimed with the first mundane terror of a new era, intake schedules for 200,000 asylum seekers. We'll need corridors, he said. Quarantine, jobs, teachers, translators. People, Rio said. We'll need more people. Wu's eyes were red and bright. We have them, she said. They're already calling from home, volunteers. A shipwright co-op wants to convert Orcans into microhab modules. A symphony wants to tour the refugee decks. Someone's grandmother is knitting 6-armed sweaters. Rios thought of Midway and of Dunkirk and of children punching cards for boycotts and of stoic lectures that tell you to do the thing you can because what you can do is enough multiplied by neighbors. We'll make an academy, she said into the hall. Not a war college only, a coalition school. Orbits, ethics, languages, forklift certifications. We'll teach mirror-kite math right next to how to ask someone their pronouns in 3 scripts. The prism chair chimed something like joy. Approved, funding earmarks significant. Laughter, honest and a little wild. A shadow crossed the sphere as a tug blocked the light, nosing in because pilots who have saved a world don't always check if their trajectory intersects ceremony. The crowd applauded anyway. The tug's name stenciled along its flank in hand-brushed paint. Grit. Rios opened the fleet net one last time that day. Terrans, she said, we brought freight and mercy and math to a place that thought it only needed law and light. We'll keep bringing them. We won today because we chose to be good at war so that we could be better at peace. Speech, someone yelled from the kindly, which was leaning on a borrowed wharf like a boxer on a friend's shoulder. "This is the speech," Rio said. "Get some water, hug who you can, start the intake, then sleep. Tomorrow we build curriculum and scaffolding and kitchens." The assembly emptied slowly, dignitaries remembering how to be people in the presence of other people. Orishan children traced their filaments along the scratches in the Lionheart's paint and sang about scars as maps. A veiled March liaison, young, tight-lipped, left a folded petition on a table asking for talks, and for the first time the word talks did not sound like stalling but like work. Gray found Rio's by a viewport and leaned on it until an engineer yelled at him without looking up from a panel. "The shanties worked because we recorded them in bad acoustics," he said. "All that echo, imperfect time." Rio's watched Orisha throw a ribbon of aurora across its night. "Imperfection is how you find the beat you can march to together," she said. "Perfection is a wall. We're building bridges." Pytel arrived, carrying 3 cups of something that tasted like tea and victory diluted in coolant. "Membership papers," he said, offering a slate that shook a little. "And a note from a school on Titan Station. The kids watch the feed. They want to be tug pilots." "Good," Rio said and drank. "They'll save more lives than any admiral." Alarms did not sound, no enemy declaimed, the quiet held, the Lionheart's plates cooled under Orisha's gentle light. On decks below, a Jadator child slept in a blanket embroidered by a human grandmother who had never left Luna. In the assembly, law clerks backed up the day's minutes twice and then printed them to paper, because someone who loved history had told them the cloud is only as safe as your last heartbreak. Rio's closed her eyes and allowed 10 seconds of weight to slide off her shoulders. When she opened them, the galaxy looked the same and different, the way a room does after a hard conversation ends with people on the same couch. "Back to work," she said. No one had to ask what kind.